So, you think mucking stables is just about hay and horses? Think again. Tonight, we're stepping into the worn boots of a medieval stable boy, the invisible figure behind the Lord's shining steeds, the tournament's roaring crowds, and the endless clatter of hooves on stone. You'll feel the sting of frostbitten fingers, the stink of manure that never washes off, and the weight of work that never ends. If you're ready to lean into this raw, muddy world, hit like, drop a comment below about your favourite medieval role, and subscribe for more stories that carry you straight into sleep. Rest easy, you've earned it. You wake up before even the birds have stirred. The air is not silent, it's thick, dense, as though the world is holding its breath in anticipation of another day it doesn't want. You are 10 years old, maybe 12. You've lost count. No one here remembers the day you were born, and birthdays are a luxury for other people in other places. The straw beneath your body is damp. Not from rain it hasn't rained in 2 days, but from the heavy dew and whatever rodents have scuttled across it in the night. You sit up slowly, brushing away hay that clings to your cheek. Your back aches, though you've never known a time when it didn't. Your hands reach for the same threadbare tunic you wore yesterday and the day before. It's stiff with sweat and something else you stopped naming months ago. You don't need a rooster to tell you it's time. You don't need a sunbeam through the slats in the wall. Your body has been trained by repetition and fear. You know that if you're late, there's hell to pay. And hell isn't fire, it's the back of a hand, the sting of a boot, the humiliation of being called a lazy worm while grown men spit at your feet. So you rise. The stable isn't far, but the path is treacherous in the dark. Stones slide beneath your bare feet. A frost has crept in overnight, and the grass crunches like brittle bones. You pull your sleeves down to warm your fingers, but there's little use. Your breath is already visible, drifting out of your mouth like the ghost of comfort. You open the stable door slowly. It groans, louder than you hoped. A horse whinnies in irritation known of the Lord's favourites. You know its name, though the horse doesn't know yours. None of them do. To them, you are just a smell, a movement, a provider of food, of brushing, of muck clearing. You're not a person, not in the ways that count. The smell hits you first. A cocktail of fermented urine, wet hay, manure, sweat, and horse breath. You've smelled it every day since you can remember, but it never softens. It wraps around you like a filthy cloak, soaking into your skin until even the river water can't wash it off. You've tried. You scrubbed once until your skin bled. The smell laughed. One by one, you begin to check the stalls. There are 23 horses. 11 belong to the Lord, 6 to his knights, 4 to passing noblemen, 2 to no one they were born here, unwanted and too young to sell yet. You feed them in silence. Oats where you have them. Carrots for the better breeds. Mouldy straw for the rest. The buckets are heavy, and your arms tremble as you carry them. You work quickly, not because you're fast, but because the fear lives behind your ears. It whispers, he'll come. He'll check. He'll notice if one stool is late. So you push past the tiredness, the soreness in your hips, the sting where your thigh met the corner of a stall yesterday. That bruise is blue now, deep blue, like the river in winter. You haven't shown anyone. You won't. A lantern swings from a post near the main gate, and the first sign of life beyond the stables appears. You duck your head automatically. Eye contact is not encouraged for boys who sleep next to rats. You step back, nearly slipping on a patch of wet straw, and steady yourself before a kick can follow. Your day has started, though the sun still sleeps. You think, sometimes, of what mornings must be like for other children. For the blacksmith's son, who wakes to warmth and ash. For the steward's daughter, who wakes to bread. Even for the pigs, who grunt in comfort beside each other, allowed to lie down for more than a few hours without someone calling their name. But not you. You wake to expectation, to burden, to labour that is invisible until it is done incorrectly. You keep your head down and begin the mucking, a pitchfork that's taller than you drives into the hay. You lift, scoop, dump. Lift, scoop, dump. A rhythm forms. Not music, but memory. Not beauty, but survival. The horses shuffle in their stalls, their eyes dark and ancient. Sometimes, when the barn is particularly quiet, you swear one of them is looking at you with understanding. Not pity, not kindness, but recognition, as if to say, we are not so different, you and I. Beasts of burden, given names, given tasks, given no choice. You try to smile at one of them, a mare with a white blaze on her nose. She doesn't smile back. But she doesn't bite you either, which is the closest you get to affection most days. Time passes without notice. The sun has not yet risen, but you've already sweat through your shirt. Your fingers are blackened. Your shoes, if you can call them, that are soft with filth. You stop to sip water from a tin cup near the trough. It tastes like rust. You're grateful anyway. The stable door creaks again. This time, it's the steward. He doesn't speak, just looks. His eyes sweep over the stalls, the feed, the muck pile, and then land on you. He grunts. A nod. Approvaler, at least, no reason to punish you today. You release a breath you didn't know you were holding. He leaves. And still, the sun waits. You rest against the doorframe for a moment, just a moment. The early wind touches your face, carrying with it the scent of burning firewood from the manor house. Someone will be eating soon. Porridge, maybe. Eggs. You won't get any until much later if there's any left. You watch the sky turn grey. A slow, soft bleeding of night into morning. No trumpet announces it. No cheers. Just the quiet, steady arrival of light into a world that still feels so cold. You are tired, but your day has only begun. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. And the next day. And the next. Because being a stable boy in the medieval world isn't a phase. It's a sentence. And you serve it without trial, without jury, without name, It's the first thing you notice every morning before your eyes are even fully open. The scent curls into your nostrils like a familiar ghost. It never leaves, not even when you dream. Not even when you wish for anything else. The stable's stench is your shadow, your blanket, your inheritance. And it is not one smell. No, it's 100 layered ones. A choir of rotten life. The acrid sting of fresh manure sharp, almost spicy sits at the top. Beneath that, the sour reek of wet hay, fermented and warm like spoiled beer left in a cup too long. There's the musk of horse sweat, thick and oily, that clings to the wooden beams. And, deeper still, the earthy rot of forgotten feed, mouldy oats, and half-chewed turnips buried in the corners of stalls no one's had time to clean. Sometimes you smell blood. Not much, just traces. From an old wound reopened or a stone caught in a hoof. The scent is metallic, iron heavy, and it hits you in the back of your throat. You've learned to breathe through your mouth. At first, it made you gag. Back when you knew too small for the bigger buckets, too soft for the weight of this world, you used to cover your nose with your sleeve and retch when no one was watching. But that was a long time ago. Now, you've grown used to it. Not because it got better, but because you stopped noticing. Or rather, you stopped reacting. And there's your own smell, too. You haven't washed properly in weeks. The cold creek water stings too much, and you're rarely given time. You scrape your arms with rough cloth when the stink becomes unbearable, but it does little. Your tunic holds the scent like it was stitched into the fibers. Sweat, dirt, urine, bits of all three in varying doses. Your hands always carry it worst. No matter how many times you rinse them in trough water, the black stays under your fingernails. A mix of soil, hoof oil, and barn grime lives in every crease of your skin. When you press your fingers to your nose, you get something raw, earthy like mushrooms growing under leather. Even the good smells turn bad here. Take apples. Sometimes, when a nobleman visits, you're told to feed the best horses with apples sliced neatly, placed gently in a wooden bowl. For a moment, the sweet scent slices through the stable's rot, like light through smoke. You savour it. It reminds you of a market you once passed as a child, of sun-warmed fruit carts and people laughing. But within hours, the apples are brown and soft, leaking syrup onto the straw. Flies come. The sweetness sours. The smell rots faster than your hope. Then there's smoke. Sometimes, on cold mornings, smoke drifts in from the manor chimney. It smells of oak and warmth and hearth. It makes your stomach twist. You breathe it in like a thief, turning your face toward the open stable door, closing your eyes for just a second, imagining that scent wrapping around you like a woolen blanket. Then the wind shifts, and the stables reclaim you. Other people wrinkle their noses when they come near. The baker's boy once laughed and called you dung hands. You hadn't said a word to him. He didn't need a reason your scent said enough. Even when you walk through the village for errands, people step aside, subtly but deliberately. A stable boy's smell is his reputation. A wall. A warning. You've wondered if that's why the horses flinch less around you than around others. Maybe they smell the same things you do. Maybe they recognize the sourness of overwork, of unwashed feet, of silent exhaustion. Maybe they trust it. There's a ritual to cleaning, of course, but not yourself. That's secondary. The stalls are the priority. You sweep, rake, and toss straw that has become as much dung as it is bedding. You've learned to identify the layers, the crusted surface, the damp middle, the hidden wet at the bottom that smells the worst. You dig through it with rhythm. If you hesitate, the stench climbs into your throat and settles there. Some days, especially in the summer, it gets worse. The heat swells the air, thickens it. The stable becomes a cauldron of sweat, manure, and decay. Your shirt clings to your back, soaked and sour. The horses pant. You pant. And the smell seems to swell with each passing hour until your senses become numb from overload. You stop noticing individual notes. It becomes a blur background hum of filth. And at night, it lingers. You lie down in your straw bed, back aching, breath shallow, and the scent still clings. Even when you are outside, even when the wind rushes past your ears and the stars are visible overhead, you can smell it. Your body carries it. In your hair, in your skin, in the folds behind your knees. It's inside your nose, under your tongue, behind your eyes. It is the smell of your life. You've asked once to the cook how she manages the stink of the kitchens, the blood from the geese, the bones. She just laughed. Said it was different. Said at least hers came with warm broth and a place to sit. You nodded. Because your smell comes with nothing. No hot broth. No bench. Just calloused hands and a back curved too early. Sometimes, in your loneliest moments, you wonder if you will ever smell different. If, one day, the scent will lift from your body like a curse broken. If you will stand beneath a real bath, let the soap bubble between your fingers and wash away every trace of this life. But that's not for you. Not yet. For now, you smell like survival. Like labour no one sees. Like the inside of a stall long after the night has ridden away. And so, you scrub what little you can, spit on your sleeve, wipe down your arms, and get ready for the next round. Because the stable waits, and the smell never does. You don't remember when you first got kicked. It could have been the dapple grey with the skittish eye, or the chestnut stallion who hated being touched. All you remember is the jolt the air punching out of your lungs, your spine screaming, and the dizzy, cold moment where you weren't sure if you were standing or floating or falling. The stable floor caught you like it always does, uncaring and solid. And then the pain came. Blunt. Deep. Radiating. That's how you learned. In the stables, there are no instructors. No gentle hands guiding yours, no soft voices warning you what to avoid. You are expected to know, to figure it out, to survive your ignorance without making too much noise. So you learn the hard way. You learn that horses speak with their bodies. They twitch when annoyed, paw when anxious, pin their ears when angry. Their tails flick like whips, their nostrils flare like trumpets before battle. And most importantly, you learn where the danger zones are. Behind the flank, beneath the belly, around the legs. You memorize their habits faster than you memorize prayers. Some stable boys don't. You knew one once-y pale boy from the far village, barely older than you. He moved too quickly behind a draft mare, laughed when she snorted, and never saw her hind leg rise. It hit him square in the jaw. Shattered teeth. Blood poured like a busted wineskin. He didn't come back the next day. Or the one after that. You don't know what happened to him. You just got his stall assignments. You've been lucky or careful. Maybe both. But even careful boys get kicked. It's not just hooves. It's heads that toss back without warning. Teeth that snap at sleeves. Heavy bodies that crush you against wooden beams when they spook. Every inch of a horse is muscle, weight, and unpredictability. And you are just small. You've stopped counting your bruises. The yellow-green blooms on your legs, the red marks on your arms, the purple stains across your ribs. They come and go like weather. You flinch when someone touches your shoulder knot from fear, but because it just hurts. Last winter, a knight's horse panicked during a thunderstorm. You'd gone in to calm it, like you were told. No rope. No help. Just your voice and shaking hands. The horse kicked the gate open and knocked you into the wall. Your lip split. A rib cracked. You lay there for what felt like an hour before someone found you. They didn't ask what happened. They just told you to get up and finish the next stall. Pain isn't a reason to stop. Not here. You know which horses are most dangerous. There's Bramble, the black gelding who hates the sound of metal. He kicks when he hears clinking spades, chains, buckles. Then there's Lucian, a tall warhorse with a temper like wildfire. You only go near him when absolutely necessary, and even then you move like a ghost, whispering apologies under your breath. Still, sometimes you slip. Sometimes you forget to step wide. Or you startle them with a bucket, or lightning cracks too close, and suddenly there's a hoof where your chest should be. One time, a hoof caught your thigh. Swelled it up like a pumpkin. You limped for weeks, dragging your leg through the mud, chewing bits of willow bark to dull the ache. No one noticed. Or they noticed but didn't care. That's the other thing you learn here. Pain makes you invisible. Or maybe the stable just has too many other things that need doing. There's no time to nurse a wound when a horse is waiting for oats, or a trough needs cleaning, or a bridle has snapped and needs mending. So you work through the pain. You learn how to tighten your belt over a bruise, how to walk with one shoe looser because of swelling, how to press a hot iron to a cut to stop the bleeding. You become your own doctor, your own nurse, your own protector, even when you're terrified, because the fear never really leaves. You pretend it does for your pride. But deep down, every time you enter a stall, there's a twinge in your stomach, a flicker in your chest. The knowledge that one wrong move could mean a broken leg, a shattered collarbone, or worse. No one would call you brave. Not out loud. But you are. Quietly, stubbornly brave. Every time you step into danger with no reward, no armor, no promise that you'll walk away, whole, you're being brave. Even if no one sees it, even if no one says your name, you think, sometimes, about the irony. These horses, the same ones who nearly kill you, are pampered by nobles, groomed for glory. They're brushed until they shine, fed apples, trained for battle, or trotted through festivals. They are honored. And you're the boy covered in their filth, limping beside them in silence. Sometimes you hate them for it, but most of the time you understand them. You know that they're not cruel, just afraid. Like you. You've both been whipped for disobedience. You've both been trapped in small spaces, forced to serve louder voices. You've both been punished for things you didn't mean to do. You don't love them. Love would be too big a word for this place. But you don't hate them either. You just coexist, two creatures caught in the same loop, bound by labor, muscle, and fear. At night, when your bruises pulse and your limbs ache, you run your fingers over the new wounds. You press gently, cataloguing the damage. You wonder if, one day, your body will finally break in a way you can't hide. A leg that won't bend. A back that won't lift. A wound that doesn't close. You wonder what they'll do with you then. Stable boys aren't like horses. When a horse breaks, it's tended to, pitied, rested. When a stable boy breaks, they find another one. You lie still, watching the rafters above your straw bed. Your body hurts, but you're still here. You survived another kick, another fall, another round of hooves and fists and silence. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. And that more than anything is what makes you strong. You've never heard your name from the master's mouth. Not once. To him, you are boy, stable brat, or when his temper flares nothing at all. Just a hand to grab, a body to shove, a mistake to curse. Your name belongs in another world, a softer one. Here, in the Lord's estate, names are for people with coin, with land, with linen sheets, and meat in their stew. You don't resent him. Not exactly. You just avoid him. Because the master's orders are never really about what he wants. They're about how he feels. And feelings are dangerous. Sometimes the master wants the white horse brushed for show. Not because it needs it, but because a noble is visiting and he needs to feel powerful. Other days, he wants it left dirty, muddy, wild-proof, that even filth obeys him. There's no pattern, no logic, only his mood. And his mood is a god you can't pray to. He drinks early. You hear the clink of tankards by mid-morning. You smell the sourness on his breath before he speaks. When he stumbles into the stable with red eyes and a loud voice, you know to disappear. Behind a stall, under a beam, into the straw if you must. But sometimes he finds you anyway. He yells, never about what matters. He doesn't know that a horse's hoof is cracked, or that the saddle is fraying, or that one of the colts is coughing again. He doesn't care. He screams about a missed bucket, about a rope left loose, about a horse looking at him the wrong way. And you absorb it. because arguing is not allowed, because defending yourself is dangerous, because your job is to nod and lower your eyes and move faster, even when you did nothing wrong. Especially then. The steward is no better. A sour man with a limp and a shrill voice, he delights in delivering the master's commands, like a priest delivers scripture. He watches you work like a hawk, finds fault in things you didn't touch. You cleaned that stool perfectly, but he says you missed a corner. You fed the horses an hour ago, but he says they look hungry. So you apologize. You don't even say, I did. You say, I'll do it again. Because to survive here, you learn not to defend your past you, serve the future. The master's children are worse. Little monsters with silk cuffs and cold eyes. They toss stones at the chickens, pull the tails of the stable dogs, ride the ponies like toys, then scream when they're thrown. You are blamed for every fall, every tantrum, every scratch on their knees. One of them spat on your hand once, laughed as he did it. You said nothing, just wiped your skin on the grass and went back to work. You didn't even look up, because being noticed is a kind of curse. You move like mist through the manor grounds. Swift, silent, always anticipating the next mood swing, the next unreasonable command. You hear rumours of servants in other estates places where a stable boy might be trained, trusted, even thanked. But not here. Here, gratitude is a myth. Here, obedience is survival. When the Lord is in a good, mudre, unpredictable, it doesn't feel like kindness. It feels like a trap. He jokes with you, asks about your favourite horse, pretends to care for a moment. You answer carefully, blandly. You don't smile too much. Don't show too much. Because today, he jokes. Tomorrow, he may strike. The world under him is built on fear. You wonder sometimes, does he even see you? Not physically. You know he sees your hunched figure when you carry buckets. But does he see you as a boy? A person? Or just part of the machinery? An extension of the muck rake, the saddle, the broom? You don't know, but you suspect the answer. And yet, you never falter. Not where he can see. You rise before he wakes. Work until his candles burn low. You keep his horses alive, his stable clean, his family mounted. You perform invisible miracles each day, shoveling, feeding, healing, shoeing. He notices only when it goes wrong. Like when the knight's horse slipped in the mud and you were blamed for not clearing the patheven, though it had rained for 2 straight days and no one could have dried it fast enough. You didn't protest. You bowed your head. Took the blow. Because the master's mood is law, and sometimes, when you're alone, really alone, you feel a strange, hollow ache. Not from the beatings. You're used to those. It's the silence that follows. The way no one ever says thank you. The way no one ever looks at you and sees you just what you didn't do fast enough. You've never been asked what you want, what you feel. Whether your leg still hurts from last week's fall, whether you had enough to eat, whether you sleep through the night or wake every hour with the cold pressed into your spine. But you keep going. You keep working. Because you are the part of the estate no one praises, no one invites to feasts, no one even fully sees, but without you, everything stumbles. The horses don't run. The carts don't roll. The hunts don't happen. The nights don't charge. You are a gear in the machine, a body in the shadows. And even when the master rages, even when his voice booms across the yard, even when his orders contradict each other and make no sense, you obey. Because what else can you do? You are a stable boy. And in this world, obedience is your armor, your punishment, and your path. You don't have a room. Not really. No walls of your own. No door to close. No fire to warm your bones after the frost sinks in through your boots. What you have, if the rats haven't claimed it, first is a corner in the hayloft or a dry patch of dirt near the stables. And even that is temporary. Conditional, earned again and again with blood, blisters, and silence. You climb the ladder to the hayloft slowly, each rung a creak, a test. The wood is brittle. It wobbles beneath your weight. But you climb anyway, not because it's safe, but because it's the only place no one will bother to look for you when the shouting starts downstairs. The loft smells like old straw, dust, and mouse droppings. You crawl toward the back your spot. It's hidden beneath a low beam, behind a stack of hay bales. No one really goes there, which makes it yours. Or as close to yours as anything can be when you don't own a single item in the world. Your bed is straw, loosely piled, mouldy in the middle. But it's soft enough to lie on, and you've arranged it just right so your ribs don't press too hard against the wooden floor. You even found an old potato sack, on-siripped down the side, but thick enough to fold and use as a pillow. On lucky nights, the air is still. No wind seeps through the cracks in the beams. No horses kick the walls. No drunk steward shouts your name at midnight. Those are the nights you almost sleep soundly. Almost. But most nights are different. There's the cold first. It comes in through the gaps in the walls, riding on the breath of winter. You feel it settle into your fingertips, your toes, your neck. You pull your arms in, curl yourself tight, try to hold your own body heat close, but it always escapes. Like everything else. There's the itch, too. From the hay, the fleas, your own grime. You scratch at your scalp, your arms, your legs, until the skin rises and bleeds. You can't help it. It gets worse at night. It always does. And then there's the sound. Horses snorting. Wood shifting. Mice chewing. Owls screeching. Rain thudding on the roof. Voices from the manor yard, far away but sharp in the stillness. You've learned to sleep through it, except when you can't. Except when your thoughts are louder than any hoofbeat. On rare occasions, you're not allowed in the hayloft. Maybe the master's hound is sleeping there. Or the night squire is visiting and took your corner without asking. Or maybe there's a storm and the hay is soaked through, and you're told not to contaminate the dry stacks. Then you sleep on the floor. Not just the floor outside. Under the eaves. or in the lean-to by the tool shed. You curl yourself beneath a cart if it's not already full of firewood. You wrap yourself in your own arms. You press your face to your knees. You breathe shallow, trying not to taste the mud or feel the slugs crawl across your ankles. You don't cry. Not anymore. Because crying leads to coughing. And coughing draws attention. And attention is dangerous. One time, you were caught sleeping inside the feed storage, too close to the oats, they said. A risk to the Lord's horses. You were dragged out by the ear and slapped so hard your lip split. That night, you slept in the open field, under the stars, without even straw to keep the earth from biting your back. In winter, it's worst. You've heard of people freezing in their sleep. The old man in the nearby village. A beggar by the road. You wonder how close you've come. When your fingertips go numb. When your breath feels like glass in your lungs. When you wake and can't feel your toes. There's no fire waiting for you. No warm broth. No mother's shawl. Just your breath and your will. Sometimes you watch the manor windows from your pile of hay. You see the glow of candles, the flicker of shadows. You imagine the warmth inside, the feather beds, the velvet blankets, the quiet. You imagine sleeping like that, your body surrounded by softness, your dreams uninterrupted by cold or hunger or horses crying out in the night. Then a rat scurries by your head, and the thought dies. You've tried to make it better. Once, you found an old tunic left behind by a travelling squire. Too big for you, but warm. You hid it beneath your straw, pulled it over your clothes every night. It helped. Until the steward found it and took it, muttering something about thieving vermin. You never saw it again. So you use what little you have. The sackcloth, the straw, the curve of your own spine. You sleep in pieces half hours, shallow dozes, dreams interrupted by a horse's cry or your own teeth chattering. And yet, in those rare moments between discomforts, when your breath evens and the moonlight softens through the cracks in the beams, you find something like peace. A quietness not offered during the day. A stillness not found in labour. A tiny flicker of rest that feels like rebellion. In those moments, you let yourself drift. You dream of soft things, of warmth, of a bed with 4 posts and a blanket heavy enough to hold you down like a promise. But morning comes early. The straw shifts. The cold returns. And the stable calls. So you rise. Wipe the drool from your lip. Stretch your limbs, even though they protest. And climb back down the ladder with no breakfast in your belly and a day's labour waiting. Because sleep isn't for stable boys. Sleep is a borrowed thing. A hope. And in this world, hopes are the first thing taken. You don't need a calendar. You don't need a clock. Your body knows the rhythm now. It wakes, moves, works, and folds into itself like muscle memory, etched in dirt and bone. No one explains the schedule. You inherit it. Like the lice. like the bruises, like the ache that never leaves your right shoulder. Mornings begin before dawn, always. You rise when it's still dark, your limbs stiff and cold, your mouth dry. You don't talk. There's no one to talk to. Just horses breathing, mice scuttling, the low creak of timber settling under centuries of weight. First, feed. That's the rule. If a horse isn't fed by sunup, someone will notice and you'll be blamed. So you carry heavy sacks across uneven stone, fingers numb, stomach hollow. You pour oats, refill troughs, check water buckets. You learn which horses nudge their pails over, which ones bite if you're too slow. You do it all without thinking. You don't have the luxury to forget. Next comes mucking. Stalls must be clean. Always. A noble's horse must not stand in filth. You grab your rake, your pitchfork, your bucket, and begin the cycle. Stab, lift, toss, shovel. The smell rises thick and warm. You gag sometimes. Not always. You've grown used to it. You try not to think about how many times you've done this. You try not to think at all. Because thought makes the days heavier. Then comes brushing and grooming. You brush with care, but fast. Speed is survival. There's a system mane first, then the neck, down the legs, careful around the belly. You check hooves. Pick out stones. Oil the leather straps. Your fingers cramp, but you don't stop. If you do, someone might shout. Midday is rarely kind. The sun climbs high and makes the hay itchier, the flies bolder. Sweat sticks to your back. Sometimes you're sent into the fields to fetch more straw. Sometimes you carry buckets back and forth for no reason anyone explains. Sometimes the master decides the saddles are too dusty, so you polish until your wrists burn. There are no breaks. You eat if there's food left in the cook's panusually crust, maybe a turnip. You eat it squatting beside a horse stall, one eye on the door, the other on the sky. You've learned to eat fast. You've learned not to taste. Evening brings its own set of tasks. The horses are walked if they haven't been ridden, or cooled down if they have. You wipe their coats, check for sores, rub in salve. You've become something like a doctor, except you don't heal people. Just hooves, cuts, swelling, colic. Then you sweep. Always sweep. The courtyard. The stone floor. The bits of straw that cling to your feet. If the steward spots a single clump near the entryway, it means another hour of punishment sweeping you can't afford to lose sleep over. Sometimes there are surprises, like when the master returns late from a hunt and expects everything ready as if he left 5 minutes ago. Or when a mare gives birth unexpectedly and you're yanked from your bed to help, though you've never delivered anything in your life except bruises to yourself. Nights are unpredictable. You try to sleep, but someone always needs something. A visitor. A runaway horse. A sick colt. The steward calls your name, or what he thinks is your name, and you run. Through mud. Through fog. Through exhaustion so thick it makes the stars spin. And when you return, there's still muck to move. Still buckets to fill. Still straps to mend. Even your dreams have started to follow the same routine. You dream of feeding, of brushing, of walking in circles beside endless horses with blinders on both their heads and yours. And when you wake, you're unsure if you ever truly rested. There is no variety, no change, no day of rest. The Sabbath is for priests and knights and wives, not for you. You wonder if the horses notice, if they feel the repetition, if they know their days are just loop-shay, ride, water, stall. Sometimes you catch one staring at nothing, just standing there, lost in a stillness you envy. You think maybe it knows, maybe it understands. You speak to them sometimes, not out loud, not really, but in whispers. In thoughts, you tell them you're tired. You tell them you don't want to do it again tomorrow. They flick their ears, stomp once, breathe warm air into your face. It's not comfort, but it's something. A witness. And what of the other boys? They come and go. Some break under the weight. Others disappear without a word. You never ask. You never say goodbye. You just inherit their chores and forget the sound of their footsteps. The routine doesn't change. Only the people trapped in it do. It's a strange kind of life. You're always moving, always working. And yet, you're going nowhere. You don't climb. You don't grow. You just repeat. The same movements. The same hours. The same hurts. It's not a life. It's a loop. But loops don't break here. So you wake again. You lift the same bucket. You say the same silent prayer. And you walk the same path from stall to stall. Because that's what stable boys do. And no one, no, even the horse sever, asks if you want something else. Your hands have stopped being yours. They belong to the work now. What were once small, soft things, perhaps even held gently once, long ago by a mother or sister or friend, are now thick and cracked, with calluses like tree bark and knuckles that bleed in winter. You don't even remember how they used to feel. The filth starts at dawn. Before you've spoken a word, your fingers are already blackened. Feed, dust, barn mould, dried mud, horse sweat, each layer clings to your palms like paint. But it's not colour. It's permanence. It seeps into your skin until no scrubbing can reach it. You've tried. In the early days, you would kneel at the river and rub them with rocks or sand, thinking maybe, just maybe, you could make them clean again. That was before you realised the stain wasn't on the surface. It was underneath, worked in, like ink on old parchment. The nails are the worst. Not just dirty, but shaped by the job. Split, warped, ridged. The beds underneath are sore, red, sometimes bleeding. The dirt under your fingernails has its own life. It returns the moment you clear it, laughing silently at your effort. You often wear cuts across your knuckles. From ropes. From splinters. from the accidental nick of a bridle buckle or the bite of a startled mare. Sometimes you notice a cut only when it stings. Sometimes not at all. The pain is a constant fog it has to shout to be heard. And the smell doesn't stay on your clothes alone. It lives in your fingers. No matter how much you rinse, the scent of manure, of hay rot, of oily hoof grease follows you. When you raise your hands to your mouth to eat, you smell it. When you rub your eyes in the dark, it reminds you of what you are. When you press your hands together in prayer knot that anyone teaches you to, you feel the roughness and recoil from your own touch. You wonder sometimes if hands can tell stories. If someone could read your palms and say, "This one has worked too hard for too long," or "This one has never held anything soft," because they haven't. You don't cradle bread fresh from the oven. You don't turn the pages of books. You don't lace fingers with another's in secret corners of the market. You grip pitchforks. You pull reins. You tighten saddles until your knuckles pop. Once, in the village, a girl bumped into you. Her sleeve brushed your hand and she recoiled. Her eyes dropped to your fingers, took them in dark, cracked, ragged, and she stepped back without a word. She didn't need to speak. You'd already heard the judgment 1,000 times. Dirty hands mean a dirty boy, a creature of the stables, not someone you notice, not someone you love. You've stopped being embarrassed, not because you're proud, but because shame is a luxury. And if you allowed yourself to feel it every time someone looked at your hands, you'd never stop hurting. Sometimes you watch the hands of nobles. Smooth, clean, pale, unmarked by weather or labour. They gesture while speaking, point at maps, hold quills. Their hands are instruments of command. They tell others what to do. Yours are instruments of doing. They are the wheels and pulleys of the estate never seen, only expected to work, to lift, to dig, to bleed, if necessary. And still they move. You don't rest them long, even when they shake, even when the chill has made them purple, even when they tremble after a long day dragging wet feed bags through the courtyard. You keep going. You wrap cloth around the blisters and pretend it's fine, because it has to be. No one replaces your hands. Only you. There's a splinter in your thumb right now, deep under the skin, too painful to dig out, too small to be excused from work. So you ignore it. You flex through it. You press it into the leather strap and let it dig deeper. You've become an expert in makeshift remedies. Warm dung for swollen joints. Cold water for the burn from saddle oil. Bits of chewed willow bark for pain. You've learned this not from books, but from necessity. From watching others. From surviving. Sometimes the horses notice. They sniff your fingers. Nudge them gently. Accept food from your palm without biting. You wonder what they smell in you. Salt? Blood? Dust? Or something deeper, something shared. You stroke their manes with the same fingers that scrape muck. And for a moment, they don't flinch. For a moment, your hands feel useful. Not just tools, but comfort. At night, you tuck your hands beneath your arms, trying to keep them warm. You curl your fingers tight so they don't cramp. You whisper apologies to them. You know what you've done. What you'll keep doing? There's no other way. One day, you fear they'll stop obeying. They'll lock into place. Refuse to lift. Refuse to close. And when that day comes, what will you be? Because your hands are all you have. No inheritance. No land. No family name to carry. Just fingers that know how to work. That know the weight of tools. The grip of reins. The endless rhythm of labour. And when they're gone, when the filth is no longer on your skin but inside your bones, who will you be then? But for now, they still move. Still lift. Still grip and claw and carry. Still tell the world, in silence, that you're not broken. Not yet. Winter arrives quietly. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets or warnings. It creeps in own morning, colder than the last, one breath sharper, one puddle frozen solid where it was only slush the day before. You don't realize it's come until it's too late. Until you wake and the straw beneath you crackles with frost. Until your breath rises like smoke in the stable air. Until the tips of your fingers go white and stop listening to your thoughts. And that's when it begins. Winter changes everything. The routine stays the same feed. Muck, groom, sweep butt, everything takes twice the time. Your body moves slower, clumsier. Your joints ache before you've even lifted a bucket. Your feet stay wet for days. Cold soaks into your bones and builds a home there. The horses feel it too. Their coats thicken. Their eyes grow restless. They stomp harder in the cold, fight their bridles, flare their nostrils. You have to calm them, wrap them in blankets, brush away the frost that gathers on their backs like second skin. And still, they shiver. You do what you can. But you have no blanket. No warmth waits for you after the stalls are clean. Your clothes don't dry from the day before. You pull them on stiff, soaked, half frozen. They crunch at the elbows. They crackle at the knees. You wrap cloth around your toes to slow the numbness, but it doesn't work. The cold finds its way in. It always does. The wind becomes a creature. Not a sound, not a temperature, but a thing with claws and teeth. It slips through cracks in the walls, bites the back of your neck, howls in your ears until they sting. You've spoken to it before, cursed it, begged it to stop, but it never listens. You forget what warmth feels like. Not heat, not fire, just warmth, gentle, slow, safe. You dream of it sometimes, being wrapped in it, like a bread oven, or a feather bed, or another person's arms. But it's only a dream. In winter, your body turns against you. Your lips crack. Your knuckles bleed. Your nose runs constantly and freezes on your upper lip. Your cheeks sting red. Your knees swell. You cough for weeks without pause. At first, It's just a tickle. Then a rattle. Then a heaviness that won't go away. But you keep working. Because no one stops for cold. No one pauses to say, "You look pale," or "You sound weak." They just shout when the horses aren't ready or when the straw hasn't been changed. They just demand more. And you give eye-toned shivering step at a time. Feeding becomes harder. Water freezes in the troughs. You break the ice with a hammer, your fingers barely strong enough to lift it. The horses look at you, impatient. They don't understand why it takes so long. Why their breath fogs in clouds. Why the hay is harder to chew. You want to tell them you're doing your best. But there's no language for that. You slip more often. Fall in the mud. In the snow. On the ice. You've fallen hard and flat on your back, so hard it knocked the air from your lungs. You lay there for a moment, staring at the grey sky, and thought, what if I didn't get up? But you did, because that's what you do. The cook's fire burns warm in the manor kitchen, but you're not welcome near it. Once, you tried to sneak in, just for a moment. Just to feel your fingers again. The steward caught you, dragged you out by the collar, called you a parasite. You laughed. Not out of humour, but because you knew he was right. In winter, you live on scraps. If the manor runs low on food, you're the first to go hungry. Nobles must be fed. Knights need their meat. Youth, your lucky get, hard crusts and bitter turnips. You chew slow, swallow hard, drink water so cold it hurts your throat. But you thank the gods for it anyway, because hunger is better than nothing. Your dreams shift in winter. They become simpler, less wild. You don't dream of running away or sailing to distant lands. You dream of fire, of hot soup, of waking up and not coughing, of being touched gently, kindly by hands that aren't demanding more of you. And still, the work continues. You brush ice from the horses' manes, scrub frozen mud from their hooves, watch their breath billow like dragon smoke. You envy them. They get blankets, warm stalls, shelters. They are valued. You are not. You are the shadow moving behind the scenes, the one who lifts and rakes and hauls and suffers, the one they forget exists until something goes wrong. And when the snow piles high against the stable doors, and you dig it out with bare hands, and your nails go blue, and your feet lose feeling, you still return to your straw bed, curl tight, and whisper to yourself, just make it to spring. Just make it to spring. Like a chant, like a promise, like a plea, because winter doesn't kill you quickly. It wears you down, 1 inch at a time, until you forget the colour of your own skin beneath the grime, until you forget what it was like to be a boy, not a body. But even then, even when your breath shakes and your limbs scream, you keep going. Because stable boys don't hibernate. They endure. You remember the first one. A mare named Cress. Soft brown eyes, a white patch on her shoulder. You'd fed her, brushed her, whispered to her when no one else was listening. She wasn't yours, none of them were, but she was the first to make you feel noticed. One morning, she wouldn't stand. Her breath was slow, her eyes half closed. You called for help, voice cracking, heart racing. The steward came, glanced once, and cursed. The master came later, cursed louder. Said it was your fault. Too much water. Not enough grain. You should have noticed sooner. But you did notice. No one listened. She died before noon. Alone. You weren't allowed to grieve. You were told to clean up. The body was heavy. Too heavy for one boy. But they made you try. You wrapped ropes around her legs. Pulled with everything you had. Your hands bled. Your arms ached. But she didn't move. Not really. Her weight was final. Dead things don't help you lift them. Eventually, 2 labourers came. Grumbling. Cursing you for making them do a job you were too weak to finish. Together, you dragged her into the woods. No ceremony. No grave. Just a hollow in the earth where flies buzzed before the digging even started. You didn't cry. You wanted to. But you didn't. Because boys like you aren't allowed to love what dies. After that, death became familiar. You saw it in the colts born too early. In the gelding who broke his leg on the ice. In the stallion that came back from battle with wounds no salve could soothe. Sometimes it happened slowly. A sickness you couldn't name. A look in the eyes that told you before anyone else knew. You begged them to notice. They didn't. And sometimes it was quick. A kick. A slip. A cracked skull. You were always the first to find them. You were always the one who had to deal with it. No prayers. No comfort. Just ropes and silence and mud. Every time, you wondered if it would get easier. If the ache in your chest would dull. If the smell of death would blend in with the manure and sweat and mould until it no longer made you pause. And in a way it did. Not because it hurt less, but because there was no room for that hurt. You still had to feed the others, groom the living, clean the stall the dead had warmed just hours ago. No time for mourning, no space for softness, and the blame. Always the blame. When a horse died, someone had to be at fault. Not the cold. Not the feed. Not the years of labour spent carrying armoured men across broken ground. You. It was always you. You didn't notice the cough. You didn't see the crack in the hoof. You didn't tighten the saddle correctly. Even when you did. Even when you tried. Even when you begged. You started checking more often. Waking in the middle of the night to feel their bellies, to listen to their breathing. You skipped meals to polish their hooves. You whispered apologies to their ears, just in case it helped. But sometimes they died anyway. And every time it happened, something small broke inside you. A thread. A seam. A part of you that still believed hard work could protect anything. You never told anyone. But you buried one yourself once. A small one. A foal born with twisted legs. The steward said to leave it for the dogs, but you couldn't. So you waited until the yard was empty. You dug with your hands. Cold, wet earth beneath your nails. Wrapped the foal in your own tunic. Whispered something you thought might count as a prayer. No one ever found out. That night, you slept in your shirtless skin, shivering. But you didn't regret it. Because for once, you weren't just a boy doing what he was told. You were a boy doing what felt right. Still, most of the time, you just clean up. You wipe blood from wooden floors. You drag bodies over gravel. You dodge questions when the nobleman returns to find his horse missing. You say, "I'm sorry," even when it wasn't your fault. And you carry the weight, not just the physical weight of death, but the guilt that always follows. The sense that you failed something wordless and loyal. Sometimes you wonder why it hurts so much. They're just animals, they'd say. But they're not. They're the only ones who saw you. The only ones who listened when you spoke. The only ones who didn't spit or strike or scoff. When they die, it's like being erased. One more part of the world that might have remembered your face, gone. So you carry on, dragging bodies, scraping dried blood, cleaning tack for horses that no longer breathe. And when the next one falters, you know before anyone else. You feel it, and your heart sinks, because you know what comes next. The blame, the work, the silence, and the ache that never leaves. It's not always noise that breaks you. Sometimes it's the quiet. Not the silence of sleep because you never truly sleep, but the in-between quiet. The moments when everything stops for a breath and the world, for once, forgets to scream. They are rare, these moments. They don't last long, but when they come, they hold you still, like the palm of a gentle God. It might be in the early morning, before the horses wake, when the fog hugs the earth and your breath is the only movement in the air. You stand in the stable doorway, rake in hand, and everything is grey and soft and still. There's no shouting, no hooves striking wood, no orders barked from the manor steps, just your heartbeat, the faint rustle of straw, and the rhythm of your own breath. You don't move a knot because you're afraid to disturb it, but because for once there's nothing demanding you do anything. For those few seconds, the world doesn't belong to your labour. It just exists, and you are in it. Not beneath it, not crushed by it, but part of it. That is the kind of quiet that breaks you. Not loudly, not violently, but gently, like something warm pressing against a bruise. Sometimes it happens at dusk, when the sun folds itself behind the trees, painting the sky in colours no one taught you the names of. You're walking a horse back to its stall, and everything is gold. The air is cool. Your muscles ache, but the pain is distant, like it belongs to someone else. You can hear the crickets waking, the flap of birds' wings as they settle into the trees. The horse beside you exhales low, steady, and, for a second, you pretend he's sighing with you, that he too is tired of the noise, that he too needs the pause. And in that second, you're not just a stable boy. You're a boy. You're a person. You matter. Then the moment passes. Someone calls. A door slams. The spell breaks. And the world takes you back. But it leaves something behind. A small piece of stillness in your chest. A reminder, not of who you are, but who you could be. Even during the busiest days, the hardest winters, the cruelest punishments, sometimes the quiet finds you anyway. Like water through stone. It doesn't ask permission. It just comes. A beam of sunlight on the stable wall. The softness of a foal's nose against your palm. The way dust dances in the air when no one's moving. It's those moments that make you feel again. You remember hunger, not just as emptiness, but as longing. You remember touch, not as pain, but as presence. You remember hope not in grand visions of escape, but in the smallest wishes. A warm meal, a night without wind, a smile not followed by cruelty. And sometimes, in the darkest nights, you sit alone behind the stables. The moon silver on the grass. The world hushed. You listen to your own breathing and you wonder, what if life were always this soft? What if the world had more pauses? What if there was space for boys like you to rest, to feel, to simply be? You know better, of course. The noise always returns. The shouting, the weight, the kicks, the endless demands. But so does the quiet, like a thread of gold in a coat of ash. And that is what keeps you going. Not the hope of escape, not the promise of reward, but the knowing that somewhere between the pain and the dirt, between the lashes and the labour there, are still seconds that belong to no one but you. You carry those seconds in your chest. You hide them like treasure. And when everything else is taken, when your name, your sleep, your strength are all stripped away, you still have that one moment, that one morning, that one sigh. It's not enough, but it's something. And in this life, something is sacred. It doesn't happen often. Kindness. In your world, it's not a currency. It's not expected. It's not owed. It appears like rain in drought brief, confusing, almost painful in its softness. But when it comes, you carry it like a secret. You memorize it. You live off it longer than any crust of bread. You remember the old knight first. He wasn't a gentle man. His voice was rough, his hands rougher. But one morning, after a long ride and a broken strap, he saw you struggling with a saddle heavier than your frame. You were losing your grip. The leather slipped. The edge of it scraped your chin. He didn't scold. He didn't yell. He bent down, lifted it with one arm, and placed it on the rail beside you. Then he reached into his pouch and pulled out half a roll still warm. Without a word, he handed it to you and walked away. You stood there for 10 minutes, not moving, not eating, just staring at that piece of bread in your hand. Your first warm food in days. And not taken, not stolen. Given. You ate it slowly, as if it might vanish. Another time, the cook noticed you limping. You hadn't said a word, but she saw how you favoured one leg. Later that night, when you crept behind the kitchen for scraps, she left a bowl out on purpose. Stew with carrots. Real pieces of carrot. She didn't look at you when you took it. She just went back to stirring. You whispered, "Thank you," to the shadows. You never forgot that taste. There was also the girl. A peasant's daughter, maybe. She was visiting the manor her father owed work to the steward. She passed you once in the courtyard, saw your hands trembling under the weight of 2 water buckets, and smiled. Just a smile. That's all. But it wasn't pity. It wasn't mockery. It was recognition. Like she saw something human beneath the filth and the silence. You never saw her again. But that one look stayed with you. Because sometimes kindness doesn't touch your skin, it touches something deeper. Something hidden. Something long forgotten. And in that moment, you felt seen. Not as a stable boy. Not as a tool. As you. The rare kindness is often quiet. It doesn't come in grand gestures. It comes in glances. In crusts of bread. In old blankets left accidentally behind. In hands that lift instead of strike. In words that ask instead of order. Once, an older boy in the stables tied your boot with one hand when he saw your fingers were too swollen to bend. He didn't say anything. Just tied it. Then nodded. You nodded back. That was the whole conversation. But it meant more than anything anyone had said all week. And then there was the horse. You don't know if it counts as kindness, but it felt like it. You were sobbing. Not loudly, just broken. In the straw. Behind the stalls. You had been slapped that morning. You hadn't eaten. The cold had cracked your lip again. And your body had finally betrayed you collapsing under the weight of another useless chore. You didn't want to cry. But you did. You were shaking, eyes shut tight, breath hitching, when you felt something warm press against your cheek. You looked up. It was one of the mare sold, blind in one eye, slow to move. She had nudged her head through the stall door and was resting her nose against your face. She didn't move, just stood there. Warm breath against your skin. And for the first time in weeks, you didn't feel alone. Kindness doesn't last here. It's fragile, fleeting, often punished. You've seen others try and fail. A servant who tried to sneak food to a hungry boy. A squire who lent his cloak. A washerwoman who whispered a kind word to a whipped boy. They were scolded, reprimanded, warned. Because kindness, in this world, is a form of rebellion. It interrupts the order of things. It reminds people that the ones at the bottom are still human. And no one in power wants that. But even so, it happens. Quietly. Rarely. And when it does, it lodges in your heart like a coal in the snow. It doesn't burn. But it keeps you from freezing. You don't talk about these moments. You don't write them down. You don't expect them to return. But you remember everyone. Like a map in your memory. Like a proof of something better. That somewhere out there, not here, maybe never here, but somewhere, kindness isn't rare. It's just life. And until you get there, you'll carry what little you've been given, like a lantern. A small, flickering light, enough to guide your next step, even through the dark. You don't dream often not anymore. Not the kind of dreams that come when you sleep. Those are rare and strange, twisted by hunger and cold and fatigue. You wake before they finish, the straw biting into your back, the wind howling in through the cracked boards. No, the other kind of dreams, the real ones, those are the ones you've learned to bury. Because in a life like this, dreaming is dangerous. You used to do it. Used to imagine galloping across green fields, not behind a horse, but on top of one. Not holding a rake, but a sword. Not being told what to do, but giving orders. You dreamed of shining armor, of soft beds, of someone saying your name with pride instead of impatience. Once, you dreamed of being a knight. Now, you know better. Now, you don't let the thought finish. Because each time you do, reality answers. Brutally. Quickly. Loudly. You are not a knight. You are not even a servant with status. You are the boy who scrubs hooves and stinks of dung. You are the one whose name they forget, whose efforts they never praise, whose future no one plans. Dreaming slows you down. And in this life, slowing down invites pain. So you tuck the dreams away. Fold them small. Quiet. Keep them somewhere in the back of your chest, where no one can see them, where even you forget they're there sometimes. But they slip out. They always do. When the sun hits just right and the horses gallop across the field, kicking up golden dust that glows like magic. You watch, and for 1 second you see yourself out there free, fast, joyful. Then the call comes. The illusion vanishes. You're back in the muck, ankle deep in waste, hands blistered and raw. You dream of food sometimes. Not just survival food, but real food. Soft bread with melted butter. Honey. Apples without bruises. Warm stew in a proper bowl, eaten while really sitting at a table with someone who smiles at you. You dream of sleep. Sleep that isn't stolen. Sleep that doesn't shiver. Sleep that ends in waking up rested, not just less exhausted. You dream of being touched, gently, by someone who doesn't want anything from you. You dream of laughter your own. But most of all, you dream of being somewhere else. Anywhere else. A city. A ship. A farm where no one yells. A road that doesn't loop back to the stable door. Sometimes, you whisper your dreams to the horses. They don't answer. But they listen. And that's enough. You imagine telling someone that you want more. That you could be more. That you feel a fire inside that's not just hunger. That you read the sky like a book. That you see stories in the mud, in the tracks of hooves, but you don't. Because if the wrong person hears you dreaming, they'll knock it out of you. With words. With fists. With silence. They'll remind you of your place. And you already know it too well. You've seen what happens to dreamers here. The boy who wanted to be a poet beaten and sent away. The girl who sang too loudly while scrubbing the floors whipped for disrespect, the stable hand who once said he'd run away and start over gone. No one speaks his name. So you learn, you dream small, then smaller, until your only wish is to get through the next hour without being struck. Until your only hope is to eat before the dogs do. Until you stop hoping altogether. But the funny thing is dreams don't die. They hide. They hibernate. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind outside is still, and your body finally stops aching, and the horses snore like soft thunder, you let yourself remember. Just a little. Just enough. What it felt like to believe you were meant for something. That you were more than a body. That you could leave footprints somewhere other than this mud. You don't let it last. You never let it last. But you hold on to the ember. Because even in a life like this, even under the weight of it all, you carry a truth that no one can see, that you are more than what they say. That somewhere, beneath the muck and the orders, and the bruises, you still dream. And no one, not even this place, can take that away completely. Your body tells one story. Your soul tells another. People see the bruises if they bother to look. The scraped shins. The split lip. The scabs on your knuckles. The way your back stiffens when you bend, or the way you limp when you think no one is watching. These are wounds you carry on the outside, and they are almost acceptable in this world. Almost expected. A stable boy bruises. A stable boy bleeds. But no one ever asks what it does to you on the inside. You learn early that not all wounds are visible. And some, perhaps the worst ones, don't ever scab over. They sit inside your chest like stones in water quiet, cold and heavy. You feel them most when the world is still. When you have a second to breathe. When no one is yelling your name or handing you a bucket. That's when the ache starts. It isn't pain, not exactly. It's more like absence. A hollow. An emptiness where your joy should be. You forget how to laugh. Not because you aren't allowed, but because your face doesn't remember how. Your smile, when it comes, feels foreign like a mask you used to wear but outgrew. You forget how to play. How to run. How to shout for fun and not out of fear. Those things belong to another life. A life you maybe had once but can no longer touch. And then there's the loneliness. It's constant. You're always surrounded by body sources, labourers, voices in the manor, but you are alone in every way that matters. No one asks you how you are. No one checks if you're warm enough or rested or scared. You could disappear, and the only thing anyone would notice is the unfinished chores. There is no comfort. No arms waiting. No hand to hold. You speak only when spoken to. You laugh only when it won't be punished. You keep your thoughts quiet and your eyes lower. Because looking up means being noticed. And being noticed means being hurt. You feel yourself disappearing, slowly. Not physically, but piece by piece. Like you're being erased from the inside out. There's a boy inside you, there was, who used to sing while working. Who used to whisper names to the horses he brushed. who dreamed of far-off places and believed, with trembling hope, that good things might still come. You don't know where he went. Maybe he left when your back took that first lash. Maybe he left when you spent your first night in the mud, sobbing quietly because no one came for you. Maybe he's still there, just buried. You sometimes catch him, briefly, when you're too tired to guard your heart. When a bird sings near the stable window. When a horse nuzzles your shoulder without reason. When a piece of bread is just warm enough to make you close your eyes. But he never stays long. There's no place for softness here. You've grown sharp to survive. Silent to survive. Still to survive. Even when you bleed, you do it privately. You press rags to your wounds in the dark. You chew your tongue to keep from crying out. You learn where the pain hides best in your jaw, in your spine, in the clenched curve of your fingers. And it's not just your body that suffers. Your spirit bruises too. Every time someone calls you useless, every time you're punished for something you didn't do, every time you're left out of meals, out of warmth, out of kindness, they don't see those wounds. Because they don't look. Because it's easier to pretend you don't feel. But you do. More than they know. More than they ever will. You feel it when someone laughs across the courtyard, and it's not at you, and you realize you haven't laughed like that in months. You feel it when you try to remember your birthday, and can't. When you try to remember someone who once loved you, and the face is blurry. You've become a ghost in your own life. But you keep going, because that's what you do. Not because you're strong, not because you're brave, but because you don't know any other way. You carry the weight. You push through the pain. You cover the wounds no one wants to see and move on, one step at a time. Because if you stop, really stop, you might unravel. And no one will sew you back together. So you keep your head down. You keep your voice low. You keep your heart locked. And you wait. Not for rescue. Not for recognition. Just for a day when the ache is quieter. When the wound doesn't throb. When maybe, just maybe, you feel whole for a minute. That would be enough. Just 1 minute. Whole. There are moments, quiet, flickering moments, when the hunger becomes something else. Not the hunger in your belly. That's familiar. You know the ache of emptiness, the way it gnaws at your ribs and makes your limbs slow. You've lived with that for so long it's practically a companion. No, this is different. This is the hunger of wanting. A deep, aching longing. Not for food. Not for rest. For more. More than a life spent in shadows. More than a name that no one remembers. More than bruises and straw and the never-ending smell of dung. It hits you when you least expect it. You're brushing a horse, fingers sore and red, and your eyes drift out the stable window. A cart rolls by, painted blue. You catch a glimpse of a child sitting in it, clean-faced, pointing at something in the sky. And for one irrational, impossible second, you imagine yourself in that cart. Hair combed. Hands clean. Looking forward instead of down. And then the moment passes. But it leaves a mark. A reminder that something in you still wants, It happens again when a travelling merchant visits the manor. He has strange trinkets, wooden flutes, colourful fabrics, glass beads that sparkle in the sun. You don't dare approach, but you watch from behind the water trough as he speaks, as he laughs, as he moves like a man with choices. And you wonder, what would it feel like to choose something? To walk a road because you want to, not because you're told to. To say no. To say yes. To matter. You don't have words for these thoughts, not really. No one ever taught you how to name longing. But you feel it like a fire, too small to heat your hands, but too bright to ignore. You imagine things. A room of your own, with a door that locks from the inside. A basin of clean water, and enough time to soak your feet. A meal where you don't have to eat fast or hide your hunger. A place where your name is spoken kindly. And, sometimes, even more than that, you imagine learning. You've seen writing, one serial writing, not just numbers on sacks. The steward had a ledger open, and the symbols danced across the page like tiny birds. You didn't understand them, but you wanted to. You wanted to know what they meant. You wanted to read. You think about stories too. The ones you hear when the older boys whisper near the fire stales of cities, ships, battles, kings. You wonder what it would be like to be in a story. Not as the boy cleaning up after the hero, but as someone. Someone important. You think about love. You don't know what it really means. You've never felt it. Not fully. But you know you want to. You want someone to look at you like you're more than your chores. More than your smell. More than your place in the world. You want to be held, and not because you're hurt. You want to be kept, not tolerated. But dreams are dangerous here. The more you want, the more it hurts. So you quiet your thoughts. You work harder. You focus on the next task. You tell yourself it's better not to imagine. That the more you picture more, the harder it becomes to survive less. But the longing stays. You carry it like a second skin. No one sees it. No one hears it. But it's always there, just behind your ribs, just beneath your breath. You don't speak of it. Because to want more is to admit you don't accept your place. And in this world, not accepting your place is a punishable offence. So you nod. You bow. You serve. And at night, when you lie in the dark, staring at the rafters, you whisper to yourself, not prayers, not plans, just possibilities. Not today, not tomorrow, but maybe. Maybe one day your feet will walk farther than the edge of the manor grounds. Maybe one day your hands will hold something that isn't heavy. Maybe one day your voice will be heard and listened to. It's foolish. You know that. But even foolish things burn bright when the world around you is so dim. And sometimes, when you touch the horse's manes, or feel the wind on your face, or watch a hawk soar far above you, free and wild and unbound, you let yourself believe, just for a moment, that wanting more doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you alive.